So yeah, Mage Skelly, medium budget, probably around 10 to 20 divs is the expected budget for it, and it's just zooming, dude. So this is like the showcase of it. Here, can't be taunted. Yeah, whatever. Nobody cares. Anyways, Mage Skeletons, medium budget, under-level gems, like genuinely under-level gems, and he's still doing this. I think it's silly, like genuinely silly. And it's very easy to set up. But yeah, I'll go through the POV for you guys and play this. Like my initial League starter plan is play Skelly Archers, and then directly after Skelly Archers, I'll be going into medium budget Skelly Mages. And we got buffed in the patch notes. We got buffed, dude. Like actually buffed. Hi, GHAZZY TV here with another Path of Exile video to talk about my current League starter plan, which was my Skelly Archers low budget, which I'll be transitioning into Mage Skeletons, but which you cannot play on low budget. You'll have to start on medium budget. And I'm going to show you the POB, but in the written guide, which will be linked in the descriptions down below, it looks like, where is it? It looks like this. Here is the written build guide. In here, you'll have everything you'll ever need. There's going to be the POBs will be available for you. There's the Skeletal Archer POB for League starting, which will all be running. Then the POB that I'll show you in this video is available here, and everything in detail that you might need to know is available in the written guide. Most of your questions, if not all, should be answered in here. You can click on these pages here to check out the details for POB, passes, skill tree, and gem links. If you don't like POB, you can go through that in the written guide over here. You can check out the Ascendancies, Bandits, and Gear, Jewels, Animate Guardian, and Spectres. However, I will need to re-record this because of some AG changes. But everything is available in the written guide, so do check that out. POB time! The build is ridiculous, but you cannot play it on low budget because it's really bad on damage output, so again, I'll play Skeletal Archers. Then when I have Fleshcrafter and a +1 amulet, I'll probably move into medium budget Skeletal Mages at that point. So, what makes this build work? What makes this tick? Let's bring this down to medium budgets. So, the important part is that we are, in fact, running Fresh Meat. Fresh Meat gives you a Giga buff for your minions based on 10% of their maximum duration. And the way Mage Skeletons have been played is that you run them with a Blessed Rebirth Medium Cluster, which is mandatory for them to work in the yellow tier or higher tier content. And essentially, in the old playstyle, you basically resummon your skeletons every 4 seconds. Because of Fresh Meat, we're going to have to do that the same way. We're taking Enduring Bond for duration, and we're also taking Mystics of Sacrifice exclusively for the duration. This puts our duration on mages down to 42.8 seconds, which means that Fresh Meat will last 4.28 seconds. So you have to resummon your skeletons every 4.28 seconds, which you already had to do because they will die after 4 seconds as soon as something looks at them the wrong way. So the playstyle is the exact same way as we had 3 years ago. Skill tree is very straightforward. We are going to be taking up the Commander Darkness, Mr. Sacrifice, then straight into Bone Barrier. And that gives us the Insta-Leech, which will be nerfed in the next patch by 5%, which is fine. Eldritch Battery for Mana Sustain. The tree is very similar to that of the Skeletal Archer. We're going to be oiling Death Attunement. Similar strategies, just a few minor node changes across the board. We're getting some extra block chance, for example, endurance charges and whatnot. Same tree as before, all the details available. We have 76, 74 block chance. We have really good defense and mitigations, and we have 7.8 million DPS. So let me show you the skills, and I'll talk about the gear real quick. We're running a 2 green setup, colors on a Fleshcrafter, and that is because we're using Pierce and GMP or LMP based on preferences, and we will be switching the extra projectile supports for hypothermia for single target. If you have a white socket, you could change the Pierce as well for something like critical strikes or critical strike damage. It is better, but I didn't want to include a white socket in the budget because I want to keep the cost down. So we're running Spell Echo, Fresh Meat, Medium Damage, Pierce, and Hypothermia every single target. And we run a Trigger Weapon, standard plus level of minion weapon with a Trigger Craft. We have Desecrate Spirit Offering, and you can either run Sniper's Mark or something. I like running Tempest Shield in here, which is an aura that does not get triggered, so I'm manually casting the mark myself. We run a Stone Golem, most likely. Potentially run a Chaos Golem. It will be preferential, but we link this with Feeding Frenzy, and then we'll have Shield Charge and Frostblink. Which actually can be 2 link. It doesn't even have to be that to link 2 sockets. And then we run a 4-link setup with the Animate Guardian. This one is a little tricky. Now, you don't have to do this, because if I disable the haste, we still do respectable damage, but I'll explain how this is set up. We have a Guardian's Blessing on our Animate Guardian with minion life and haste. Do not activate this unless you know what you're doing, and you have the Animate Guardian setup, which I'll explain later in this video. We have a Convocation to get our Spectres and Animate Guardian out of harm's way when needed. Sniper's Mark, manual cast, and we have a 1-socket Spectre. The main priority of Spectres is to have Guardian Turtle, as shown in the POB, and the other Spectres will be a Pale Seraphim, a Spirit of Fortune, and the last one will be Forest Warrior. We have a 1-socket Aura, Purity of Elements, and then we have a 3-link Aura setup, which will be Zealotry and Precision, which you will have to have a lower level on, and then a Generosity. Normally, Awakened Generosity is very cheap, so I included that in this POB myself, since they're very affordable. And that's basically the skill setup. Gear-wise for this build, we are running a standard +2 level for Minion Wand with a Trigger Crafts. Oops. My bad. What did I do? Sorry. We're running a shield with +level of minions with life, and then a, preferably if you can get one, with minion crit strike chance, and if you can bench craft increased chance to block, that is actually going to help you a lot with the defenses. We're running a standard +2 level of minion helmet with implicit from Eldritch to get extra lightning rest if you can. It's very cheap, you can use the lowest one for that. And then you want to have physical damage taken from hits as either fire, lightning, cold. In this case I have fire. This is to mitigate further physical damage, helps a lot. And this is a 2-modded helmet. There is chaos resistance on here. 70% overcapped in this POB. It doesn't have to be chaos rest, because I'm assuming this would be a little expensive. But as the POB is showing, we're 70% overcapped in chaos rest, so you don't need that. Fleshcrafter, standard setup. We have standard gloves with increased effect on mark implicit, minion damage. You can craft minion damage on your gloves explicit as well. I decided not to keep the cost down. So just dexterity, life, rest, chaos rest, if you can get it. Boots will have brittle ground. I did not use that in the gameplay footage I saw earlier in the footage here. Life regen doesn't really matter. Chaos rest if you can get it, but other than that, it's just movement speed, life, and rest. We have a rare amulet with +level of all spell skills, together with any attributes, resistances, whatever you need, right? Bone rings, the damage mod would be an attack cast speed, and other than that, it's just life, attribute, resistances, whatever you need. You'll have 2 of these. Darkness of Throne, 75% in this budget. The jewels we're running is a 1 with taunt effect, would be helpful because it lowers the enemy's damage output, but life and 1 damage mod. The other jewel is life and 1 damage mod. Flask, I have a Amethyst Flask to help with resistances. This is quite effectively helping out quite a lot. We have a Quicksilver Flask, a Basalt Flask, and a Rumi's Concoction Granite Flask, and 1 instant heal removal bleed flask. The Ghastly Eye Jewels, if you can get life damage mod together with an attribute or a resistance, they can help a lot with capping your resistances, and they shouldn't be that expensive. If they are, what you can do is run a Cobalt Jewel instead with % life, % minion damage, and then attribute or resistances on that instead to help that out. And a luxury upgrade for the medium budget is a Watcher's Eye with additional physical damage reduction if you're affected by Determination, which our Guardian Turtle will supply for us. Obviously, Blessed Rebirth, very important on the medium cluster. Same thing with Skeleton Archer builds or any Skelly build. And we'll run an Enduring Composure for the endurance charges on a small cluster. That's it. That's all you need. It's basically nothing. It's super cheap. This gets you probably around 10 divs, but I usually want to be on the safe side and say that 20 divs plus minus, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper than that to get this up and running with everything included. However, I want to talk about the Animate Guardian. In the POB, if you click on the little drop down here, you can check the medium budget Animate Guardian, in which counts roots could be literally anything, to be fair. But what's important here is a couple of things. First one is the Oscarm. Oscarm is kind of bad, but what it does is it gives your Animate Guardian negative chaos resistance. And this is important to understand when you're playing a Fleshcrafter build. Is what Fleshcrafter does is that for every 1% of positive chaos resistance that your minions have, 2% of their maximum life is converted to energy shield. As a result, if they have 50% chaos res, they will immediately die. And it's just, you can't use a chaos golem as a result of this because they have a higher chaos resistance inherently. So you have to use a stone golem as a result of the Fleshcrafter. So with that information, the idea with the AG is to use Oscarm to make sure that he doesn't get any chaos res. And then we can run something like a Garb of the Ephemeral. like this to get crit immunity. You can basically run any chess piece you want, essentially. Growth Call is nice, but you don't have to do that. And then Mask of the Stitch Demon is quite important, because what this does is that the enemy guardian will have 0 energy shield, but you're giving him a lot because he will still have some chaos res, and that's going to give him a lot of regen, because he's going to regen 1% of his life per second per flat 500 maximum energy shield. And then you just smack a Dying Breath for some extra damage on that. But the most important reason we're doing this is to give him such ridiculous amount of regen so that we can use Guardian's Blessing to get a free haste aura. Now, if you don't have these things, just don't run the Guardian's Blessing and you'll be fine till you have these things. Till then, you could run Leer Cast and Dying Breath instead and just do a standard setup for Enemy Guardian. And if he dies, you can resummon him as a 3.26. That's the setup for the Enemy Guardian. And that concludes the entire medium budget setup, which I have been playing to grind out very fast in tier 16s. I managed to do quite a few tier 17s, based on the mods, of course. I did do an Uber Cortex. I will point out that I do not recommend bringing a medium budget summoner build into neither tier 17s or Uber bosses. Some can do it, some do it better than others. I just normally don't recommend doing it. In the POB, in the top right corner, if you click here and you can check the high budget and the mirror budget. The mirror budget is going to be ridiculously expensive, but I want to show you the high budget setup and explain that a little bit, because this is where the biggest things are happening. We are going to be moving over to using a thing called combat focus duels. What these do is that they're changing prismatic gems to not be able to choose a certain element, and Skeletal Mages is a prismatic gem. So we're using one that prevents it from choosing cold, which means that you only summon fire and lightning minions. However, we use one that prevents fire, so now you're only summoning Skeletal Mages that shoots lightning damage. As a result, we can then utilize Doriani's Prototype. And Doriani's Prototype is a little different than it is in PoE 2, for those of you who come over from PoE 2. It does the same thing, but the game is different. So it makes it so that enemies have the same resistances that you have in terms of lightning res. And when you take damage from lightning, it's mitigated by your armor from hits. In PoE 2, there is no lightning damage over time effects. In PoE 1, there's a handful. And those things will instantly kill you at any given time unless you counter it. Most people doing this, they do counter this with regenerations effects. Some of them even go for Lethe Shade, which is over here, that reduces damage over time effect by 50%. I don't like that. I'd rather just completely solve this problem. So the way we solve this is by running a thing called Glorious Vanity. It's a timeless jewel of Sibaqua, which turns the keystone into divine flesh. What this does is that it makes it so that any sort of elemental damage we take, 50% of that will be taken as chaos damage. That's fire, lightning, and cold is now taken as our chaos resistance instead, and it increases our max chaos res by 5%. So now we have 50% of the lightning damage will still kill us. So the way we solve this is by running a thing called Sublime Vision of Purity of Ice. Again, this is high budget, so be wary. This means that we cannot use any auras except for Purity of Ice. However, we can roll up to 30% of fire and lightning damage will now be taken as cold. This means that 50% of elemental damage is taken as chaos res, and 30% of the remaining 50 from fire and lightning is now taken as cold damage instead. We combine this with the Watcher's Eye when affected by Purity of Ice to do another 20% of fire and lightning damage taken as cold. So that means that when you take a lightning hit, 50% is mitigated by your cold resistance and 50% by your chaos res. This means you never need fire res, and you don't need any lightning res. If you take a cold hit, 50% of the cold res damage will be mitigated by your chaos res. So you never need fire res, you never need lightning res. You don't ever take damage from that, ever. And we can combine this with a shield that gives you plus maximum cold res, for example, because we don't really have room on the jewels for this, to increase our cold res up to 90%, and we can have chaos res at 80%, and we'll just become really tanky this way. But yeah, we're using a +2 minion weapon, but in the high budget we'll include things like minion damage, minion crit strike chance, obviously have the trigger. The shield should have plus level minions with bench block increased chance, and we have life mod on it, we have some crit strike on it, max cold rest. Like, this is not even a super big shield for that matter for high budget, but I wanted to keep the budget quite realistic. We have the exact same helmet as I was showing in the medium budget, so it's like a 2-modded helmet. You will need some chaos rest wherever you can get it. I probably would recommend buying something like a Fracture +2 or a Fracture Chaos Rest or something, and then craft on that to get these mods. That would probably be the easiest way. We again use the implicit for minion life, but most importantly, the physical damage taken as cold to further mitigate fist damage. We have a Doriani's Prototype, And then we have standard minion gloves, same gloves that we use in medium budgets, same boots we use in medium budgets. And then we have the RDF Replica Dragon's Fang for plus level of minion skills for level of summon skeleton gems, which is not needed in the medium budget, but you will want that for the high budget. And then we have a Calandra's Touch, which is normally not expensive. If it is, then just buy 2 of the ring I'm about to show you. That's the ring. This is a reflective mist ring. Most of these rings will be available for a couple of divs at most. You'll probably find them with mods like, hey, you're going to take a couple of damage per second if you equip this ring, which you directly counter because you're regenerating 400 life per second, so you don't care about it. You can have negative mana. You can have... you don't even need a life roll mod that much. I don't even have a life on my current helmet. So there's a lot of different modifiers that you can have that are negative that would still work. If you have negative fire rest or lightning rest, negative fire rest, it doesn't matter because you don't care about it. All you care about is negative lightning rest and preferably a life roll on the initial high budget ring. So very, very cheap. Darkness of the Throne, obviously high roll in this case. We run again, this time we run a life with lightning damage. And again, you want 1 taunt jewel and then attributes or resistances. I smacked in a chaos rest in this one. The other one, I have 2 damage mods, life and attributes, and set up with a flask, 1 life flask, roomies, basalt, sapphire flask in this case for more mitigation, and a quicksilver. Small cluster, enduring composure, but now I also added a dexterity roll to help with dexterity. The glorious vanity, I'll talk about that in a bit. The combat focuses, as I explained before, Watch Your Sign Sublime. Medium cluster should now have Blessed Rebirth and Renewal. And the large cluster we're using is what's referred to as a meta cluster, where we have 35% increased effect of the nodes, 3% increased attack cast speed, and then all attributes. Those are the 3 most important ones. And then if you can get one with a good life roll, that is preferable. A lot of people will craft these. They're quite expensive in the first week of a league, and then after that they kind of crash. I think that the initial price of these goes for like 50 to 60 divs, and then 4 or 5 days later they go down to like 30 to 40, and later on they'll be like 20 divs each. But it is an expensive build, do keep that in mind. So that's the priority of these things. Glorious Vanity, this jewel, the best case scenario is to get 2 automation studies. I've listed a bunch of these in the POB with different numbers, so you can see which ones you can actually grab. And these are automation studies that gets you additional physical damage reduction for better defenses. So you'll be even tankier than what I showed you earlier. And they're very, very, very strong. And that's basically the entirety of the high budget setup for this build. As you can see, you don't need minus 200 lightning rest because the build's doing 66 million shaper DPS, even with this half-fast setup with most of the build's items having a lot of options to be upgraded. And you also can get yourself a Vault Summon Skeleton, which allows you to click on this button and you do 113 million DPS if you do that, which is insane. However, if you are feeling like you're Elon Musk and you want to play a mirror budget out of this, here's a version with woke gems across the board, higher levels on everything. The numerical values on the gear is absolutely through the fucking walls. You basically have everything and anything that you could ever want. And the helmet is still 2 mods. But what happens in the high budget, the mirror version, is that you will actually try to get a ring with negative lightning rest, damage, and attack speed being positive. So there's a lot of things you can do. The Glorious Vanity can now include something like a thaumaturgical protection for block chance increase, defense equipped shield, and you'll end up doing 155 million, which is actually less because the 3.26 comes with a buff to spell echo, so you'll actually do 160 million instead. And if you click the damage button on this build, you'll push out 262 million shaper DPS. But I mean, this is maybe a handful of people will play that budget. On the other hand, the build's fun to play. It's very, very fun. I will point out that this kind of defense is set up with Dorianis, and most of the gear is actually similar to what you would run if you played a Wretch Defiler Spectre build. So if you play it and you don't feel like, hey, I want to play something else, you can very, very easily change this into a Wretch Defiler Spectre build with very little effort, because most of the things are the same. Since we're using a Doriani setup with a similar defensive set for the Spectre build, it's not that much of a difference to change these things into a Spectre build and run the pure Spectre in a high budget version. Medium, there's a lot more to change in it, but if you're playing high budget, it's very easy to interchange both Spectre builds and Mage Skeletons. But yeah, the high budget AG, I want to talk about that a little bit. We'll run a Kingmaker for crit, obviously. We'll run a Gruthkul here, because we don't have the whole Chaos Rest situation, because we're not using Fleshcrafter, so you want to get Chaos Rest, but you can get yourself implicit, Eldritch Implicit Gloves for Unnerve on hits to make enemies take more spell damage, and you can get some Chaos Rest from your boots. But the Lair Cast is quite interesting. In the configuration, as you can see here, I've disabled Malediction. I just want to point this out because this is such a cool thing. I think it's actually in the mirror budgets. Yes, it is. So, what you can do is you can grab yourself an item that's called Glimpse of Chaos. It looks like this. And you can corrupt this because this one has Malediction, which you can get right there. So you'll buy the Malediction Glimpse of Chaos. You'll corrupt it till it's bricked. Essentially, it's bricked. Rare. Then you'll use a Mythic Tainted Orb till it hits. Either it bricks entirely or it hits a unique. And you want that to hit the Leercast, which is a very common unique. And therefore, you can have a Malediction affected Leercast helmet, which is a ridiculous fucking helmet to make. Which I only have in the mirror budget because it's a fun thing to do, and I'll probably try to do that this league. But that's a fun note. I don't have it enabled in the configuration, but that's the build. And did I mention Spectres? I think I did. Right, Guardian, Pain Artist, Spirit Fortune, Forest Warrior, Pantheons. We run Solo Lunaris, and we'll run Gruthkul because we have immunities from Pure Developments and what? Sorry, not Pure Developments, but we have immunities through our auras. I didn't go through that. Sorry, my bad. Desecrate, Spirit Offering, Sniper's Mark. You can move one of your auras in here to self-cast Sniper's Mark if you want to. Golem, Feeding Frenzy, Frostblink, Minion Life, Race Spectre, Animic Guardian, Minion Life, Meat Shield. We don't use an aura for the Animic Guardian at all here. Convocation. Since we are not able to use auras because of Sublime Vision, we can only run Pure Device. We can run buffs such as Tempest Shield, Arctic Armor. That's shock immunity and freeze immunity. And we don't care about ignitions because we are already regenerating, we're instant leeching, and we don't take any fire damage. So we can put an Empower in here if you really want to juice things up. Then I have a Shield Shard for mobility. And we have the Battle Mage Cry, which is actually enabled in this PvP. I explained this in the Skelly Archer video as well. Basically, you summon all your minions around the targets. Just keep summoning them. And as soon as the boss becomes attackable, you click the War Cry. And all your minions will get increased crit strike chance. If you don't have this active, you're only doing 58.8 million DPS. And if you look at the mirror body build, you go from 155, you're only doing 138 million DPS. Like, you're going to do ridiculous damage with this build no matter what you do. But Spectres, Guardian Turtle important, Pain Artist for damage, Spirit of Fortune for damage, Forest Warrior for damage. It's just straightforward. It's super solid. Hope you guys enjoy this. I'm super excited to be playing Mage Skeletons again after 3 years of being considered unplayable. And hope you guys will too. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the build. And hit the like button, subscribe for more content. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe. Keep rocking.